Hey, good morning, Central. It's Andy. Thanks for tuning in with us as we go through Second Timothy. I'm going to be covering the first part of Second Timothy chapter 3. If you'd like to read along, I'll be reading from the ESV. But understand this, that in the last days there will come times of difficulty for people who will be lovers of self, lovers of money, proud, arrogant, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, heartless, unappeasable, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not loving good, treacherous, reckless, swollen with conceit, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having the appearance of godliness, but denying its power. Avoid such people. For among them are those who creep into households and capture weak women, burdened with sin and led astray by various passions, always learning and never able to arrive at a knowledge of the truth. Just as Jannes and Jambres opposed Moses, so these men also oppose the truth. Men corrupted in mind and disqualified regarding the faith, but they will not get very far. For their folly will be plain to all, as was with those two men. In 2 Timothy chapter 3. We won't get very far. We'll come back to that thought, but for now I want to focus on this idea of difficult times. I want to talk about what it was like for Paul and for the apostles during this time before we take a look at our own time. You know, the three people of the New Testament, Jesus, Peter, and Paul, who command us to obey and to submit to governing authorities, they were all killed by the government. And furthermore, not only were they killed by the government, they all paid their taxes to the government that killed them. Jesus himself paid for part of his execution. Difficult times. How dark did the world have to be in the first century? For when life and love became flesh, we killed him. Difficult times. I think of Paul just about to be killed after writing this letter. I think of Paul writing to the Romans, telling them to submit to the government when Nero was in charge. Nero, the man who set the city of Rome on fire, and with the new land he put it a new garden, blamed the Christians for the fire, put them on poles, and lit up his new garden with Christians that he had killed. Nero, the man who killed his pregnant wife with his own hands, and then married a boy because the boy looked like her, as some form of way of dealing with the guilt. Difficult times. Domitian, throwing the Apostle John to an island so he dies by himself. No, persecution is nothing new for the church. Difficult times are nothing new for the church. In fact, when Peter starts his sermon, the first sermon at Pentecost in Acts chapter 2, one of the things that he says is that, quoting Joel, in the last days I'll pour forth my spirit on all people. So since Pentecost, we've been living with all of these things going on. With all the hatred going on, with all of the racism going on, with all of the violence from all sorts of sides on the political stance. There are lots of things going on that are, quite frankly, difficult to watch. Difficult times. A virus, people losing their jobs, people not even knowing when they're going to be able to come back in person. And here's the temptation with all of this. To take the easy road. So really, church, what I want to talk about for just a moment is the warning that Paul gives here in verse 9. they will not get very far. So here's what I want to tell us today, and what I really want to emphasize. You can choose to do the easy thing. You can choose to do the thing that is more comfortable, more appealing, more appetizing, but you won't get very far. And so we must all come to the point where we decide to do what is good or what is easy. I think of Paul writing this letter, having lived out the implications of what this means. He wouldn't get very far if he had just given in. And notice that doesn't mean that you'll live a longer life. That doesn't mean you'll live an easier life. No, getting very far has a different goal than simply living comfortably and living with peace all the time. No, when Paul's writing this, about to be killed himself, reflecting on what matters most, he instructs Timothy with great encouragement. Don't give in, because we must decide to do what is easy or what is good. And that is the temptation that we face even for us today. So what's an example of doing something that might be easy versus doing something that what is good? I'll give you a personal example. Recently, on a Facebook discussion board, someone asked my opinion on something. I responded, and then they sort of provoked me to keep going and try to debate me over Facebook. And I remember the words that I learned a few years ago, because I knew I wasn't going to get anywhere in this conversation. I was just going to get angry myself, and I was just going to provoke this person all further on in anger. And I didn't want that. It would have been easier just to keep going in this debate. It's sort of what I wanted to do. My instinct wanted me to keep going. And I had a choice of doing what is good or doing what is easy. And so I remembered what I learned a few years ago. Silence is the cross in which my pride must die. And so I practiced the art of not getting my way, of not giving in and just keep going with the discussion, but I decided to back out of the discussion, let them have the last word, and just walk away from it. It wasn't easy. I certainly had things in my mind that I knew I could just type out and they wouldn't be able to refute it. But that really wouldn't have gotten me very far. See, I have to face in my life frequently this choice. Am I going to do what is easy in the moment, or am I going to do what is right? Wide is the path that leads to destruction, and narrow is the path that leads to life. So I want to read for you a passage from Proverbs chapter 5. It really has the same idea in mind. It has this encouragement. And I really want to leave you with these words. This is a warning against temptation. My son, be attentive to my wisdom. Incline your ear to my understanding, that you may keep discretion, and your lips may guard knowledge. For the lips of a forbidden woman drip honey, and her speech is smoother than oil. But in the end, she is a bitter wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Her feet go down to death. Her steps follow to path of Sheol. She does not ponder the path of life. Her ways wander, and she does not know it. As I was reading this passage and I was thinking about Paul's encouragement to Timothy, this was the text that immediately came to my mind. It's always been the same thing. Doing the wrong thing is often tempting. The lips are dripping with honey. It sounds smooth, smoother than oil, to just give in and do what is easy. But it will not get very far. Like smooth words whispered through a prison door, the more we give in, the more we are enslaved. So my encouragement for us, church, today as we start off our day, go about your day choosing to do what is good instead of doing what is easy. Have a blessed day, church.